this episode, I get the pleasure of speaking with Kyla Denanyoh, podcast host of You Are a Paralegal and content creator for the legal community, as she shares her story from getting her JD to the what happened after law school. I can only describe my reaction as admiration. We have our obstacles to conquer, and Kyla's were nothing short but inspirational. Listen in for more. Need an extra set of hands for a case that requires a little more investigation work? Check out our proud sponsor of Season 3, Affirm Investigative Solutions, where you get the tailored and personal care for your case when you need it most. With over 10 years of experience, Affirm Investigative Solutions makes the process easy. Set up a call, develop a plan, and then execute that plan. Affirm Investigative Solutions, the litigation partner that has your back.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where everyone is at this moment. I want to welcome my wonderful new friend that I made, Kyla. She has a very interesting story, and I would, there's just so much that we can talk about because we can literally talk all day, every day. We have a lot in common. She's a mother like me of toddlers, and we both are hosts of podcasts and YouTubers and content creators in general. But her story has a little twist to it. So I'm very, 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 very happy to introduce to you Kyla. So welcome to the show. Welcome to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. So tell me a little bit about you and how we got here today.
Yes. Hi, so my name is Kyla Denanyoh, and I am the host of the You Are a Lawyer podcast. As you mentioned, I am a YouTuber, I'm a podcaster, I'm a mama, I'm a wife, I'm an Ohioan, I'm all the things. But importantly, I am a paralegal, and I actually began to train paralegals as well. So the name of my podcast is You Are a Lawyer because I am a law school graduate. It took me years, probably not even being conservative, at least 3 years for me to tell people that I went to law school, because I went to law school in Louisiana. Whole thing, I should have looked into where I was going for school, right? Because I eventually moved back to Ohio and was like, oh, all the lawyers I know are down there. So I get back to Ohio. I had not passed the Louisiana bar. Working full time, I took the Ohio bar exam. I did not know Ohio law. I did not pass that. And so I just needed a job. I just needed any job. So I get a job working as a document specialist, which is basically a secretary, but all I did was review, edit all day long. I'm in a basement working literally second shift, 4 p.m. to midnight. And one of the attorneys is like, you're really good with edits. You don't even have to run them by me. If you put them in, we're doing like a corporate lease review or whatever, you're fine. And I was like, thanks. And he's like, where'd you go to school? And I was like, well, which one? What do you mean? I'm like, well, I went to Ohio State for undergrad and I went to Southern University for law school. Law school? Why are you working 4 to midnight in a basement if you went to law school? I needed a job. What? Wait. So that tiny little step, because I felt comfortable enough to share, really opened up, swung open the doors for me. So what happened was I progressed to where I then was hired as a paralegal. There was an opening and I was like, you know what, I'm going to apply. Terrified, right? Because when you have a law degree, in fact, I think I got that job as a document specialist because I was taking my law degree off my resume.
Oh, wow.
So to apply for the paralegal, I have to turn in a whole nother resume, but it's the same law firm. I'm just trying to move over. And they're like, okay, now you got to really explain. And I'm like, okay,
shying away.
Yes, but for me, it ended up to look better that I was lying about having less education than lying about having education I hadn't earned. So at least at that time, it was a benefit. So I ended up becoming a paralegal, loved that job. And then my now husband was like, hey, I just got a great job offer in Cincinnati, 100 miles south of where we lived. Do you want to move? Sure. And this is how naive I was. I Googled my law firm. They had 7 different offices, and one was in the new city we were moving to. And I'm like, for me, it's a lot easier to just cut ties and move on. But because of the experience I'd already had, I was like, well, let me see if I can transfer. So I had a virtual conversation, which was not common, right? This is 2017. People were not doing video calls. I'm
Yeah.
like, just let me drive down and meet you. I'm amazing in person. If you talk to me, you will hire me. And they're like, no, video. I'm like, okay. So I had the video call, heard nothing. I talked to a partner and an associate. I'm at the same firm. So I enter office them a thank you card, crickets, don't hear anything. Wow. I'm like, okay. So meanwhile, my husband's getting Airbnbs, going to Cincinnati to work, being there for 5 days, coming back. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I finally hear something and they're like, you got the job. You can start Monday, right? I'm already there. I'm like in the same firm. So they're like, why not? It's a quick HR change. I'm like, oh, okay. So fast forward another year. They kept saying, we need another Kyla. We need another Kyla. And this was a compliment, not we need to replace you. They're like, can we duplicate your brain, get someone else to help? And I was like, well, why don't I train other people? Well, have you done training before? And I'm like, I did. I used to be a book editor with McGraw-Hill. I used to work at Abercrombie & Fitch and I would write there like manuals. I was like, I love training. I was like, I'm sure the skills translate, right? I went to law school. I learned all this stuff about, they're like, okay, great. So I ended up being a operations manager of a legal department. And I didn't mention this before, but the department I transferred into was copyright IP law. And specifically, we worked in e-commerce. So if you have a store, somebody is selling your stuff or selling counterfeits of the Let's Talk Paralegal shirt, you would contact us, we would look into it and this whole thing. Really boring at the time because 2017, Amazon was around, but there were still your Barnes and Nobles, there were still all these other things, right? In fact, 2016, I had just left Sears working in their administrative office. So like Sears was even still around.
All right, you're aging us.
So yeah, so they saw my value. They saw how great I did with work. And then I do believe that the law degree helped them to trust me because I was like, no, I promise you I can do this. And they were like, okay. If not that, it was the fact that they wanted to duplicate me, that they were like, I bet you can train someone else. So I did leave that role 2021. And at the time that I left, I was actually supervising 7 different paralegals. Wow. So we were supporting 5 offices of the 7 offices in the law firm that all practiced that e-commerce law.
Wow.
So yeah, so I love being a paralegal. I love training paralegals. There's so much power in it, right? Like you see the memes where it's like big lawyer has no idea and is talking to the paralegal like, how do I do this? That was us. That was us. No, like 2020, the world closes, or at least offices close. They're shipping us laptops. They're shipping us FedEx boxes. They're shipping us, secretaries are like, sorry, you're furloughed. Kyla's department, here's your stuff. You guys have to keep moving, right? And I was like, oh, because law firms, only the partners had laptops, right? Associates probably had desktops, maybe a laptop, or they had like the big stand. We didn't have laptops. What do you need a laptop for? You do all your work in the office. But when they even started to get a clue that things were shutting down, they were immediately shipping us stuff because we had to keep working the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. So. I always say, especially when I'm doing consulting for law firms, I'm like, the best way that I can explain to you what I do is I train the people that make you money, because they're your customer service. They're your frontliners. They're your caseload managers. They're the ones that speak to your clients more than you ever will. They're the ones that when the client calls in, they're asking for the paralegal. They're not asking for the attorney, depending on the situation. Of course, we all have those other types of clients, but understanding the value in paralegals, and that's, kudos to the law firms, for providing you, 1, with that opportunity, and for 2, for identifying that they needed help, right? Because sometimes I feel like that's the train wreck and, the headway to burnout, to, being unhappy in your workplace because you're overwhelmed, you're overworked and undervalued. So understanding that all those elements were actually identified by your managers, right? Your lawyers, whomever, was actually a really breath of fresh air for me anyway, because it's very uncommon in my world, especially when I do the consulting and things like that. I always say that I never actually speak to the attorneys. I always speak to the paralegals, and I always speak to the receptionist and everybody first, because the attorneys are like, yeah, I have this amazing process and this amazing software. I'm like, well, do you?
No, you have amazing staff that's handling
You have
it.
an amazing staff that can handle the process and the software and probably doesn't even go by your process. They go by their own rules.
Yeah.
So understanding the importance of having your staff to where they need to be, to having these, and hey, I'm not nagging on attorneys or anything like that. Obviously, without attorneys, the legal industry wouldn't be as fruitful as it is nowadays. But understanding that there is a line that should not be crossed, right? We all talk about all the bad stuff, but there are, like I said, that was a breath of fresh air that they were actually able to identify those issues.
Well, it was a breath of fresh air, but I will say, this is years later. It was very difficult at the time. It was very difficult. I mean, to say that I could have done this on my own, it felt a way. I think I'm still kind of emotional about it, because had that attorney not given me more responsibility, I have no idea, right? Had he not even asked me, why are you so good at this? What if I said, oh, I got an associate's in editing, right? Like, who knows? And then I remember when I did transfer to the law firm, and even there, I'm working, but I was having a seat at the table and they were asking me questions, and then my questions were thoughtful, my responses were thoughtful. And they're like, where'd you get this from? Oh, I went to law school, right? So that morning you're probably brushing your teeth like, am I going to mention it today? Am I going to tell them? Am I going to do, like, what am I going to say? But they did present me with the opportunities. And then thankfully I had something to say when I was there. But like, it was a hard time. I mean, I definitely had to like twist some arms to be like, I can do this. Who else is going to teach you how to do this? Because when I came in, the actual title that I had was practice group assistant. And I started working it. And then we were trying to hire and we couldn't find anyone, because I was like, because they're doing paralegal work. Practice group assistant sounds like the assistant to your secretary.
Right.
Like, that doesn't sound like anything. So I was like, first of all, you need to label it, you need to pay it for what it actually is, you need to do all this stuff. But no, it was really difficult. But at the same time, I was the only person doing it. So I did have that leverage to say,
doing it well. And doing it well, right?
Well.
Because if you were not doing it well, you wouldn't have stayed there.
They would have said,
they
we're
wouldn't
fine.
have even opened up that conversation, which is what I'm always telling the paralegals, to always put your best foot forward.
Mm-hmm.
They will see value once you see your value. I think that's really where the importance lies. It all goes back to confidence. It all goes back to, kind of like what you said, when am I going to say this? Like, going to law school is a bad thing, right? Like, kudos to you to even graduate. Like, that, a lot of people go to law school and never even finish law school in general. So understanding what you bring to the table. I feel like sometimes paralegals always feel like the attorneys are above the paralegal, and that's not necessarily true. It shouldn't be that way. It should be a partnership, right? You're working with your attorney to move these cases forward and to hopefully get the best outcome for the client, because at the end of the day, we both made that ethical oath when we became legal professionals in general.
Mm-hmm.
And the same goes for, I know most of my audience is paralegals and attorneys, but the same goes for just legal professionals, the receptionists, the intakes, the document specialists, all the in-betweeners. Everybody sees the law firms and they think, oh, paralegal attorney, but there's so many other things: law clerks, copy engineer, or I don't know, whatever. I worked in a really big law firm, like such as similar to yours, where they had multiple offices in nationwide. And I was grateful enough, or I guess honored enough, to move to New York. I was able not to move to actual New York, but to the department that handled the New York cases. And I was able to learn that as well. But it wasn't, like, again, you have to prove yourself. You have to, be that person, that go-to person, like really, really show your value. And sometimes you have to speak up. In your situation, it was a little different. They came to you, which again, that's very rare. They would just automatically just have hired somebody probably, and then just figured it out there. But understanding that, these opportunities, that's very uncommon. These opportunities usually don't come to you. You have to go to them, you have to ask for that promotion, and you have to speak up, and you have to be very, take your initiative in your career, and really prove to the law firms or legal departments or legal companies in general that you can do it and that you have it all. So that brings me actually to your podcast, right? You are a paralegal podcast. I thought it was a very interesting concept. I actually was not expecting that from the title, but once you explained it, I'm like, aha, I get it. Like, it just takes a little minute, but I'm just like, yeah, that's really what it's about. And that's the way it should be, because at the end of the day, I believe, in my opinion, you're humanizing attorneys, which is what I love about the podcast, right? Because everybody has like this dark view of attorneys, thanks to Hollywood. With the
Well,
movies
a lot of
and
it is
TV.
real.
Yeah, I know. And the majority of the legal industry, unfortunately, one bad apple can spread. And unfortunately, we just get that bad reputation, right? And so
Yeah.
it's really nice to see that there is a platform for these attorneys to come in and say, hey, I'm not the devil, I'm not bad, I'm not here to just take your money and not help you. But I'm also a human, and I also have all these other things and
Yeah.
all these other elements going on, right? Because I believe that sometimes we forget that an attorney is an attorney, but they're also a business owner, they're also a spouse, a parent, whatever, fill in the blank, and they have all these other things outside what they know as their company and all these other stressors that sometimes as legal support staff, we don't really see it that way. And we're like, why are they being like this with me? Why are they being so X, Y, and Z with me? So talk a little bit more about your podcast and how you highlight these amazing people with these really cool, I guess, extracurricular activities, right?
Yeah. So to your point, to even take it one step further with humanizing lawyers, they're also typically someone's boss and someone's subordinate, right? So there's that part as well. You're going to them and you're like, I need this, I can do this. And they're like, well, I have to run it by these people. Even if you're equity partner, you still have a group of people you have to talk to. And the legal profession does set it up to be like a caste system, and they definitely enjoy that, right? It's lawyer, or actually it's probably partners, associates, paralegals, sometimes secretaries, because a lot of secretaries are work wives. So secretaries are paralegals, and then everyone else. So, but we definitely do perpetuate that caste system. I mean, I was so terrified to even mention going to law school because I had the scarlet L on my chest for loser, not lawyer, paid all this money. I could have got the education at the library. So why did I do that? Right. So that part was really difficult. But I started the You Are a Lawyer podcast because lawyers are people, but also lawyers are incredibly fascinating. I have natural hair, if you can see it on the YouTube. There's a natural hairline that I love called TGIN. I started Googling it. The woman went to Harvard Law School, had breast cancer, and created her own hair product so that she didn't have all the chemicals. What? And I was like, lawyers are so limitless. And I don't know if that's something that they necessarily teach you, but I was like, let me see if I can find this somewhere else. And so my husband and I started looking for a house, and I started looking at HGTV. I was like, builders, contractors, and lawyers. And I found a brick artist, a man that creates Lego sculptures, who went to law school at NYU, worked in a big firm, and then started making Legos on the side. I talked to him, and he had 8 million Lego blocks behind him. He was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go build an Apple later. What?
I love it.
And they're lawyers. And I was like, oh, okay, you guys got to talk to me, right? There was a guy on the first season who has a law truck. He literally gets in this truck. It's all decked out on the inside to look like a nice, comfortable office. He has a couch on one end, and he drives to neighborhoods. And if you have questions, something where you would sign like a little quick something, but where you don't need like a big, probably like family law or something. Let's say you have like a contract issue. You can actually come into his law truck, sit down and talk to him. He makes himself available for 4-hour blocks.
Wow.
How cool is that? And I was like,
so
okay.
Innovating. I love it. I always think, it was funny because when I was young, that kind of reminds me, when I was younger, I was very artistic. I love the arts, not like painting or anything, more about music and dancing and things like that. And I grew up in that world. I grew up in Miami, which is literally the melting pot of music. And so I grew up with all these different cultures and all these different surroundings. So I was naturally a creator. And so, back in the 80s and mid 90s, you were either a doctor or a lawyer, right? Sure. So that was kind of like, or an engineer, astronaut, all these extravagant things. And much like your story, other than the fact that I did not even go to law school, I did take the LSAT. That's as far as I went. But I just didn't find that I enjoyed being a paralegal a lot more than, going to court and representing these clients and being in front of a judge and then, choosing a juror and stuff like that and making those final decisions. I'm more of an investigator, researcher. I like to do, roll up my sleeves and really do the nitty gritty and really just support the master of the strategy. So like you said, for me, it wasn't uncommon to like go dancing on the weekends and work as a paralegal and do all these network events as an executive paralegal for the law firm. So, I would get paid both ways. And that's really how I paid my way through college, and I paid my way and I paid my car off and everything because I was able to balance those worlds. And for me, that was just normal. Right. But then I noticed, I'm like, a lot of people, that's not normal for a lot of people. Like, I'm like, that is, I grew up in a different world, apparently, where it's not common to have your profession, but yet still have a nice hobby on the side where you can benefit from monetary value, or just emotional value. Because some people just do it, for free, just to have that fulfillment of any kind. So I love that your podcast kind of ties that human part. But, also like, I love that truck. I mean, I now I got to check out that episode. I missed that episode.
Yeah,
so I got to get that episode. That was really interesting. So tell me what inspired you to create this platform, right? Because it's a niche platform, but it's also very relevant, right? And it's also to the general public, I think will help assist the general public in understanding basically a lawyer's mind and how it works. Because I think lawyers and for law school, you have to be creative, you have to be analytical and logical, and you have to have that balance in general. So kind of talk me through, the I guess the thought process of creating this amazing platform.
So lawyers are very creative, they're very innovative, but it's not celebrated, right? Because you work so hard, you do your legal writing, legal research, all this stuff. You have to find all these internships. Like even for myself in law school, I get there and I'm like, oh, I love the Constitution. I love rules. I love organization. I'll be parliamentarian. Oh, you can't do that. You're running against the 2L, right? So law school, you got your 1Ls, 2Ls, 3Ls. And I'm like, but if I can do a better job than you, I don't see limitations. I'm going to run for it. So I end up being parliamentarian, and then I end up being editor-in-chief of the newspaper. But I say that because I'm doing this while I'm attending classes, while I'm dating people, while I'm paying my rent. But we don't see that as being creative. We don't see that as being innovative. We were literally stretching 24 hours to their max, but we didn't see it like that, right? You're out dancing and then going to work and you're like, whatever, I just take a coffee or a Red Bull. Doesn't everyone do this? No, people go home and watch TV for hours and then go to work the next day.
Time sucking things is what I call it.
And so lawyers are extremely creative, extremely innovative, but it's typically in like the funnel of being at work.
Yeah.
Oh, if you're a litigator, you're going to sue someone. How can you get creative with this research? How can you get creative with the case you found? Oh, you're a transactional lawyer. I'm transactional. We went to court every now and then, but for the most part, I was doing research. And I'm not talking creative as in like, we're going to use pink on our Excel spreadsheet instead of yellow.
We're going to color code the flow chart.
Exactly. I'm talking about, we tried to find this unauthorized seller. We couldn't. What if we buy a product from their store? What if we do this? You know what I mean? You have to think about, well, what would a layman do? What would anybody else do? And that's the creativity that a lot of lawyers tend to squelch down. But this platform was so creative, and this platform was so important to me because I have an African mom-in-law, and she's like, what do you do all day? And I'm like, I'm a lawyer. And she's like, oh, okay. Oh, and I'm sure she's at church. Oh, she does law. She does this. She's doing that. And now I actually get paid to do this, right? But no one told me when you get old enough, as long as you can pay your bills and you can live happily, you'll be fine.
Oh
the whole thing was
repeat that again. Repeat it again so everybody can hear you. Oh my God, that is so important.
If you can pay your bills, sleep well, and be happy, that's all that matters. My heart is bound up until I read whether or not my daughter ate lunch all day. But I'm a lawyer. But I'm like, did she eat, right? How hungry is she going to be when we pick her up? What about this? But nobody cares about that because they're like, oh my God, yeah, she's a lawyer. No, I'm so many other things. But it took me learning to value myself, value my education, and realize I cannot turn off that side of my brain. It shows up in every single thing that I have. I have a meal chart where I tell, did she eat a little bit of this? Did she eat a little bit of that? So I know, don't put that back in there. And did that come from being a lawyer? Yes. Did it come from just being me? Yes. But they're all together, right? And so this platform, I had to create it because someone is going to be looking for it. Someone is going to say, I really think fundraising is cool, but I want to go to law school. What can I do? And I just talked to a philanthropy person. Or like your podcast, if someone had told me I could have brought all my organizational skills, all my executive assistant skills from years before, I went to law school at 28. I did corporate America for 8 years before I even went to law school. But I was like, oh, lawyer, engineer, doctor. If I could have listened and said, I could have brought all of my skills and actually been around lawyers, I probably wouldn't have went to law school. But I had no idea that it existed, right? Because, oh, you should be a lawyer. You should be, people call my daughter doctor now, and she's 2. And they're already like, oh my God, she's gonna be a doctor. And I'm like, or a chef or a painter or an adult, right? Like, because I know, you start labeling people early and they start to think that's all that they can do. So I was very conscious of that when I created this platform, because people need to know that there are other options. Going to law school is not a negative thing. Being a paralegal is not a negative thing, but you are not your job. You're more than one thing. So
I love it. I love how, again, you humanize it, right? A lot of people, that's the number one question I get. And it was funny because, and I have to share this story because I did share it once on LinkedIn, and this was like 2 years ago, and it didn't go viral, but there was like over 10,000, views and everything.
yeah.
And it was just something out of frustration. I ended up going on an interview for another, wasn't really a podcast. I think it was like an actual like radio station, but they actually streamed it or whatever. And so radio station, I know, right? And so I'm there, and they didn't give me any notes, like nothing to go off of. I didn't know exactly what to expect, but I was like, whatever, I'm me. I'm not gonna hide myself, and I'm prepared to do whatever I need to do. And so all of a sudden, I get there, and they introduced me as a woman entrepreneur, small business, and I'm like, whoa, 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 cut. I was like, cut. I'm like, I'm Eda Rosa, founder of Eda Rosa LLC. Doesn't matter. Obviously, I am female. Like that. Yeah. Nobody has to, like everybody's gonna figure that portion out. Like me being a female has nothing to do with it, and that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because they're like, are you ashamed to be, female, Latina, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, those are labels that society has placed upon me, that even though I embraced it for a very long time, it took me a very long time to remove all those labels, to really figure out who Eda Rosa, founder of Eda Rosa LLC is. And that's really where my brand became brand, right? That's really where my company started blowing up, where the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast came out, where my content became more connected. My audience actually understood who I was, what my brand was. It's when I understood who I was and what my brand was. And I think that had a lot to do with my journey as trying to figure out who Eda Rosa was as a person, not as a mom, not as the wife, not as a daughter, not as a friend. Who is Eda Rosa in the core? What does she enjoy to do? What does she love to do? Where does she want to take Eda Rosa LLC and Let's Talk Paralegal? And I think that's why your platform, I was so drawn to it, because you really hit home with that, that your guest, you as a person, your story in general, really created that, euphoria that so many legal professionals, and not just lawyers, legal professionals really need to hear, that you're not alone. You can be the realtor, you can be the, artist, you can be the musician on the weekends, you can be all the things, you can be the PTA person, you can be whatever it is that you want to be. Whatever your little heart desires, you can do that. And you can manipulate your time and take control of your time in order to fit what's important to you first. Because I feel like that's another thing. We don't put ourselves first. And, we call these things, again, we label it, right? Hobbies, things we like to do, things that make us happy. But then at the end of the day, it's like, okay, if it makes you happy and if it fills your cup, then why aren't we doing more of it? Why are we not including that? Why are we not prioritizing that? Why are we not making this a thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, so one little tidbit that my best friend and I do is we only live 30 minutes apart. We're not that far, but we have busy lives. You know, we're both entrepreneurs. She's in psychology, obviously I'm in legal, but we own our companies, we have all these things, but we make it a point at least once a month, we meet up, just us, no spouses, no nothing, no, just us as friends. And
Yeah.
we really dedicate that moment or whatever it is, even if it's just an hour, just to our friendship and honor our friendship. And I think that everybody's like, well, how do you do that? You're a mother of two toddlers and you do this and you do that and you're always everywhere and blah,
You
blah,
have to
blah. And I'm
find it.
like, I make it a priority. I make it a priority to spend time with those that I love, make it a priority to do the things I love, because if I'm not being fulfilled and I'm not happy, I'm not going to be able to fulfill anybody else. I'm not going to be able to do the best I can do, create content, be the mom that my kids deserve, be the spouse that my husband deserves, understanding that and I think that's where we lack, right? We forget ourselves in the
Oh,
process.
yeah.
We get so caught up in the deadlines and the tasks and the projects and all the things that we forget who we are as a person outside, like you said, right? We're not just a lawyer, we're not just a paralegal, we're not just fill in the blank. We are way more than that. And I love that. I love that your platform actually, does that.
It does. And the website, my tagline is simply promote what you've done with your JD. Actually, I think it says law degree, but promote what you've done, because if it's the food truck, if it's being a nurse, if it's being a podcaster, promote whatever you have done with your JD. Because we are more than just the one thing. And so it's a constant reminder to other people. It's a constant reminder to myself. I am more than just one thing. I am multiple things, and it's great. And also, it's a reminder for me not to be ashamed of my law degree. I talked to a young lady who went to Yale Law School. She knew a lot of lawyers. She worked in the Clinton White House. And I was like, well, oh my God, and what are you doing now? And she's like, oh, well, I teach people online. And I was like, I mean, you teach them about the White House, you teach them about law? She was like, no, I do something completely different. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, and I don't even tell people I went to law school. She was like, because people would always tell me, if you don't take and pass the bar, what was it worth? Right. And so I'm like, okay, if I reach one person every season and remind them that the money you paid for law school, the time you spent in law school, the people you met in law school was valuable, it's worth it. If I meet one law student who's like, I want to go to law school, but I don't only want to practice, what else? Then it's worth it. If one person listens to this and says, kind of like Kyla, I like organization, I like administrative work, but kind of like Etta, I think I could have a bigger impact doing something else, it's worth it, right? Like, I create it. If you listen to it, great, but it's really for the people to listen to, because if you can hear it, if you can pull something from it, that's the part that matters. So.
I love it. And talk about, because you brought it up a couple of times and I actually wrote it down because I really want to talk about this. It's really important. Talk about what you went through when you had that crossroad, right? When you, because that's a very pivotal moment, right? And sometimes, especially females, I have to say, we brush off things and we push it down and we suppress our feelings and what we think about it. And then later on, like in our 30s, it's where we get those aha moments and we're like, well, how stupid was I to think that X, Y, and Z, right? Like what, why was I thinking about that? Like, I'm so mean to myself. Like, I would never say that to a friend. Why would I say that to myself? And trust me, been there, done that. I'm getting closer to 40. So I've already gone through all of that. And as a mom, I've been better, right? I've actually, especially as a mom of a boy and a girl. So definitely, it came at a great time. So talk about really how that process went, right? Because that must have been hard. I mean, we kind of like skim through it, but it must have been hard to go to law school, do all the things, take the actual exam and not pass it, and then take another exam and not pass it, while trying to get married, create a family, do your thing, trying to find yourself, whatever you were experiencing throughout that very pivotal moment. I don't want to say failure because it's not. It actually brought you to where you are today. So I never say that the bad things, quote unquote, for those that are not looking, that happen to us, they're lessons, right? They're stepping stones to something better. And all we have to do is take that with a grain of salt and literally push forward. But also soak in it and analyze it, right? Just like we do with our jobs, we're very logical, analytical thinkers in general in the legal industry. So just like we do with that, we need to start bringing that more into our personal development. And so talk a little bit more and walk us through, we only have like 5 more minutes, but walk us through kind of like what you went through and how you actually got out of it, because that must have been a very pivotal moment that created an impact and really, brought you to where you are today. So I feel like that's important for the audience, because I know there's like at least 100 people out there that are like, oh man, I'm right there with Kyla, and so I really want them to really understand that part and how you got through that and, are now this amazing, innovator. So
no, I think that's a great point to bring up, because you are hearing the glossy side of everything, right? So I graduated from law school 2015. And I would describe that period between 2015 and 2018 as either standstill or just delay. And even saying the word, I just pictured just gray, just because, so I had a couple of lights at the end of the tunnel. One of them was my now husband. He was my boyfriend who moved me to Louisiana for law school. And we broke up first semester because I was busy. And I had no idea how busy I would be. He went to school for like physics and all this stuff. I went, and I'm like, we've done school. I had zero idea how busy it would be. I would send him a copy of my schedule, from 2 to 4:30, I'm studying contracts and I'm going to this, I'm doing that. And he's like, I don't need to schedule time to see my girlfriend. I'm like, you do when she's in law school. So that part was really difficult, but he was light at the end of the tunnel because we went out for ice cream when I graduated. And he was like, okay, I know you just did this thing, but what do you want? No one had asked me that in 3 years. You go to law school, you start bar prep, you become a lawyer. No one had asked me, what do I want? And so he had that outside perspective that I was like, oh, well, I want to finish my ice cream. And then, I want to date you. And then I want to, what else? He's like, okay, great. So then we start dating, and then he's like, okay, well, what kind of job do you want? Oh, it doesn't really matter because I'm going to be a lawyer. So I become the document specialist. He's like, well, cool. So he's in, HR payroll website development. And he's like, well, I got this great opportunity in Cincinnati. Do you want to come? Oh, sure. I can take the bar down there. So this is what I mean by delay. Everything is just standstill. What do you want to do? Oh, it doesn't matter. My golden ticket is coming. It doesn't matter, whatever. Oh, do you want to get married? Not this year, because I'm about to, I'm going to be a lawyer and then my name's going to be different. Oh no, I don't, that's silly. We had this talk. I was like, why? Okay, my married name's already going to be different than my law degree, but it doesn't have to be different than my bar certificate. Petty, simple, minute stuff. Like a weaker man would have been like, ma'am, I'm leaving. Wow. I gotta go. But I was like, delay. Everything was delayed. My entire life, I'm one of 6 kids. And so I love kids. I love children, all of that. And I don't mind saying I'm 38. I have a 2-year-old. So even having her at 36 was not the plan. Oh, okay, we're together. Let's start a family. How can I take the bar while pregnant? How can I study? I don't think, no. Delay. Every single thing was delay. And so when we moved to Cincinnati at this time, I'm there, I'm working in this new department, busy. I mean, we were both busy, loved it, workaholics, sitting next to each other in the weekends on our laptops. And I'm like, Kyla, when are you going to start living? When? You are well past 30. I turned 30 when I was in law school. You're well past 30. You've moved from your hometown multiple times now. You have this degree. You have an incredible career. You're training people. You're doing all this great. When are you going to live? And I was like, okay, I will not take the bar exam again. And I was like, I won't do it. And him, again, outsider perspective, he's like, if that's what you want, that's fine. My mentor, are you sure? Oh no, I'll pay for it. My friends, oh no, but you wanted to be a judge. Everybody's like, but this is what you wanted. And I'm like, yeah, but things can change. And the fact that I am not going to pass the bar exam and become a practicing attorney doesn't mean that I'm not a lawyer. And You know what I mean? And I had to be telling myself, Kyla, you are a lawyer. You can do anything. You're an Ohioan. You can do anything. You're this, you're that. And so the time, very dark, all about delay, all about staying still. But when I did decide for myself, you're living life right now. You have a great job. You're dating someone great. You want all the things that you always wanted. When are you going to do it? When you're 50? When are you going to do it? And thankfully, we were able, to get pregnant. We were married November 2019. My daughter arrived June 2020. And now 2 years and a couple months in, here we are. But I'm like, it's amazing that I had everything that I wanted because I was delaying for so long. So yeah, it was a really tough period, but I'm grateful that the audience is able to listen to all of the positive stuff and all of the current stuff before you get to hear this and be like, man, because it was really dark at the time, but thankfully we got through it.
Yeah, and I admire that about your husband, and because I'm always a big believer of having a really strong support team.
Yeah.
And that team can look like anything. In your case, it was him. He was obviously your big supporter and your big cheerleader. But in other people, it could be a friend, it could be a coworker, it could be a mentor, coach, whatever. All the things, even a therapist.
Yeah.
I'm not so I love that. And it really hit home with me because I have a very similar journey as well. And I'm 2 years younger, so I'm 36.
Okay.
I just turned 36 in September. So again, I think it has to do with the pivotal 30s is what I'm calling it at this moment, because I noticed the pattern, in my friends that are very similar in age. And I think society puts those expectations, like what you said about 36. My mom in the 80s had me at 36.
Okay.
So for me, that wasn't a big thing. My parents divorced when I was 13, so divorce wasn't a big thing. So everybody has their own little worlds. Everybody grows up in their own little perceptions and their own little realities, and we don't realize that society is the one that's putting that pressure on us, that we have to be pregnant by 35. We have to be pregnant or married by whatever. We have to be married. I mean, I know women. I just met a woman. I literally went on well, not just, but a couple months ago, I went off to this, I forgot where it was, up somewhere in Florida, but we were there. It's by the beach. It was really nice. I forgot the name of it. And so we camped out there because my cousin has an RV, and I met this woman there. She was like in her 50s, 60s, never been married, never had kids, still dating, still living her life. And she, she's like, I wouldn't trade this for the world. So really, point blank, guys, in short, because we're coming up to the hour, what I want to say, and what I probably will end the podcast with, there is no right or wrong way to live life. There is no right or wrong way to make decisions in your life. Mistakes, failures, whatever you're calling them right now, those are just lessons and stepping stones to something better. Just learn from them. That's the only thing that they're there for, is to learn from them, to better yourself, to, personal development. If you don't have it, you're never going to have the legal career that you want, or any career, or any hobby, or anything. You're never going to succeed in all the other places in your life without working on yourself first. So thank you, Kyla. I appreciate your time. Your story was amazing. Your platform that you created is definitely needed in the legal industry, especially after the pandemic. And I appreciate you continuing on, and I wish you nothing but the best, nothing but the growth. I'm all for it. I'll become your new cheerleader from here on out. And I just want to thank you for taking your time, because I know your time is valuable, and I appreciate you, spending it with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was great. And I really appreciate talking to your audience.
All right. Have a good one. Until justice is served, everyone. Bye.